The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of the MAR, Interstellar Military Academy on Terminus 7. Hannah stood at the back of the formation, her posture relaxed, her eyes distant. Around her, cadets from a dozen different species stood at attention, their uniforms crisp and their faces eager. She looked like she belonged there, but also like she wished she could disappear. 5 years had passed since the Void War ended. 5 years since humanity and the Dalthic Empire signed the Galactic Accord and promised to build peace together. The Academy was supposed to be a symbol of that peace, a place where former enemies trained side by side. But peace was harder than war, and old wounds healed slowly. Hannah's roommate, a tall Dalthic named Velmora, barely looked at her as they dressed for morning drills. The Dalthic had skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in the universe. Hannah envied that confidence. She pulled on her boots and tied her dark hair back, keeping her movements small and unremarkable. The Academy was hosting a ceremony today. Dignitaries from both sides of the war were coming to honor the heroes who had fought and died. Banners hung from every building, showing the symbols of unity that politicians loved so much. Hannah hated ceremonies. They reminded her of things she wanted to forget. In the mess hall, she sat with Tay, her only real friend at the Academy. Tay was human, loud and cheerful, with an easy smile that made people trust him. He was training to be a pilot and talked constantly about the ships he would fly and the adventures he would have. Hannah listened and said little, which was how she preferred things. "Big day today," Tay said, shoveling food into his mouth. "The Dalthic ambassador is speaking. Should be interesting." Hannah nodded and picked at her breakfast. Across the hall, she could see Dalthic cadets watching the human students with barely hidden contempt. The peace was official, but it was not real. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The ceremony began at noon in the Great Assembly Hall. Thousands of cadets filled the seats while officers and dignitaries stood on the stage. The Dalthic ambassador, Creethon, was a broad-shouldered figure with ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. His voice boomed through the hall as he spoke about sacrifice and honor and the bright future ahead. Then he said something that made every human in the room go still. Humanity survived the war through fortunate circumstances. Creethon declared, through the mercy and wisdom of the Dalthic Empire, peace was achieved. We chose to end the conflict when we could have continued. We chose to show restraint. Hannah felt Tay tense beside her. Around them, human cadets clenched their fists and stared straight ahead. No one spoke. No one moved. But the anger was thick in the air. The ambassador continued talking, but Hannah stopped listening. She knew the truth. She had been there. She knew exactly how the war had ended, and it had nothing to do with Dalthic mercy. The ceremony ended with polite applause. The cadets filed out of the hall in silence. Tay was fuming, muttering under his breath about lies and propaganda. Hannah said nothing. She had learned that silence was safer than truth. That afternoon, they had tactical training with Commander Vel Cross. He was a decorated Dalthic War veteran with scars that ran across his face and neck. He taught advanced combat strategy and was known for being brutal with his students. He particularly enjoyed making human cadets look foolish. Today, he had prepared something special. "We will run a simulation," Vel Cross announced, his voice cold and precise. The Battle of Broken Stars, the turning point of the war. The moment when humanity claims they won their victory. He gestured to the holographic display that filled the center of the training room. It showed a massive space battle, Dalthic ships surrounding a small human fleet. It looked hopeless. It looked impossible. "I want human cadets to show me how they would solve this scenario," Velcross said with a thin smile. Show me the genius tactics that won the war. Or prove that you simply got lucky. One by one, human cadets stepped forward to try. The simulation was designed to be impossible. Every solution failed. Every strategy collapsed. The Delphic cadets watched with satisfaction, while the humans grew more frustrated and embarrassed. Tay leaned close to Hannah. "You should try," he whispered. "You're good at this stuff. I've seen you working through tactical problems in our room." Hannah shook her head. "I'm just here to learn," she said quietly. "Let someone else handle it." But her eyes betrayed her. As she watched the simulation play out again and again, there was something in her expression that didn't match her words. Something old and tired and knowing. The class ended with no human cadet solving the scenario. Commander Velcross looked pleased with himself. "Perhaps next time you will realize that your victory was not earned through skill," he said. "Perhaps you will show proper respect to those who chose to give you peace." The human cadets filed out in silence, their heads down, their pride wounded. Hannah walked with them, just another unremarkable student. But Tay noticed the way her hands were shaking. He noticed how she wouldn't look at the holographic display as they left. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling while Velmora snored softly across the room. Her mind replayed the battle simulation over and over. She knew every mistake in that scenario. She knew because she had been there. She knew because she had won that battle, not through the tactics shown in the simulation, but through methods that couldn't be programmed into a training exercise. She had spent 3 months, embedded deep in enemy territory. She had learned their language, their customs, their military protocols. She had fed them false intelligence and watched as they moved their fleets exactly where she needed them to be. And when the moment came, when everything was in position, she had struck with precision that still haunted her dreams. The Battle of Broken Stars wasn't won by fleet tactics or superior weapons. It was won by one person, alone in the dark, doing terrible things for a necessary cause. Hannah closed her eyes and tried to push the memories away. She had come to the academy to forget, to be normal, to be just another student learning just another trade. She didn't want to be the ghost anymore. She didn't want to be the soldier who had ended the war. But Commander Velcross' simulation had awakened something inside her, something she had tried very hard to bury. And she was starting to realize that no matter how much she wanted to hide, the past had a way of finding you. In the darkness of her room, Hannah made a silent promise to herself. She would keep her head down. She would stay invisible. She would be no one special. She would be anything except what she really was. The weeks following the ceremony grew darker. Commander Velcross seemed to have made it his personal mission to prove that humans didn't belong at the academy. Every lesson became an opportunity to question their competence. Every drill became a test designed for them to fail. Hannah watched it all from the sidelines. She kept her scores average, never too high to draw attention, never too low to warrant concern. In combat simulations, she made deliberate mistakes. In tactical exercises, she offered simple solutions that missed the deeper strategy. She had become an expert at being unremarkable, but the pretending was taking its toll. Tay noticed first. He would wake in the middle of the night to hear Hannah breathing hard in her bunk, fighting nightmares she never spoke about. Sometimes she would leave their room and not return until morning. He would find her in empty training rooms, staring at weapons displays with an expression he couldn't read. One night, the academy ran a surprise drill. Alarms blared through the corridors, and cadets scrambled to their stations. It was supposed to simulate an emergency lockdown. Hannah was trapped in an equipment storage room when the doors sealed automatically. Tay found her 20 minutes later, after the drill ended. She was sitting on the floor in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest, her whole body shaking. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. She looked like someone drowning in memories. "Hey," Tay said softly, kneeling beside her. "It's over." It was just a drill. Hannah didn't respond for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I know it was just a drill." But her hands were still shaking, and Tay pretended not to notice Dot in history class. Professor Nam lectured about the final days of the war. He was an older human with gray hair and a gentle voice. He spoke about battles and casualties with the detached tone of someone who had studied war but never lived it. "The conflict ended with an operation known as the Ghost Protocol," Professor Nam explained. "The details remain classified, but we know that a single human operative infiltrated the Dalthic command structure and disabled their war machine from within." The classroom was silent. Even the Dalthic students listened carefully. "The identity of this operative has never been revealed," Professor Nam continued. "They're protected by the highest levels of human government. Some call them a hero. Others call them a necessary evil. But everyone agrees they changed the course of history." Commander Velcross, who was observing the class, made a dismissive sound. "Propaganda," he said loudly. "Humans love their ghost stories. One person could not accomplish what you describe. It would require a team, resources, impossible luck." Professor Nam looked uncomfortable, but didn't argue. Hannah sat in the back row and stared at her desk. She could feel eyes on her, but when she looked up, everyone was focused on the front of the room. The tension at the academy continued to build. Small incidents became larger conflicts. Dalthic cadets started accidentally bumping into human students in the hallways. Human cadets responded with cold glares and clenched fists. The instructors tried to maintain order, but peace was fragile, and old hatreds ran deep. Hannah tried harder to disappear. She skipped meals to avoid the crowded mess hall. She took long routes to classes to avoid high-traffic corridors. She stopped attending the social gatherings that Tay tried to drag her to, but invisibility only worked until someone decided to look at you. It happened during a joint training exercise. The cadets were divided into mixed teams, humans and Dalthics working together on tactical scenarios. Hannah was paired with Velmora and 2 other Dalthic students. They barely acknowledged her existence. The exercise involved navigating a simulated enemy facility and retrieving sensitive data. It should have been straightforward, but Velmora's team was overconfident and sloppy. They triggered security alerts, wasted time arguing about tactics, and generally did everything wrong. Hannah followed silently, watching as they blundered through the scenario. At one point, they reached a locked security door. The Dalthic students tried various codes, consulted their datapads, and argued about the proper protocol. Without thinking, Hannah stepped forward and entered a bypass code. The door opened immediately. The teen stared at her. "How did you know that code?" Velmora asked slowly. Hannah felt ice run through her veins. "Lucky guess," she said quickly. "I saw it in a training manual." Velmora's eyes narrowed, but the exercise continued. They completed the scenario, but Hannah could feel the weight of suspicious glances following her. That evening, Tay confronted her in their room. "You need to be more careful," he said quietly. "People are starting to notice things." "Notice what?" Hannah asked, but she knew what he meant. "The way you move. The way you know things you shouldn't know. That bypass code today? That's not in any training manual." "I checked." Hannah sat on her bunk and put her head in her hands. "I just want to finish my time here and move on. I don't want attention. I don't want questions." Tay sat beside her. "Who are you, Hannah? Really?" She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw something in her eyes that made him take a breath. Something vast and dark and heavy with secrets. "I'm nobody," she said finally. "Just another student trying to get by." But they both knew she was lying. The breaking point came during another of Commander Velcross's exercises. This time, the scenario involved close-quarters combat. The cadets were put through simulation pods, fighting holographic enemies in various environments. Tay was paired against a team of Dalthic cadets. It was supposed to be a fair match, but Velcross had modified the parameters. The Dalthics had better weapons, better positions, better everything. Tay fought hard, but it was hopeless. He was overwhelmed quickly. But the simulation didn't end when it should have. The Dalthic cadets continued the exercise, turning practice into humiliation. They cornered Tay in the simulation and continued to defeat him over and over, while Velcross watched without intervening. By the time Academy security stopped the exercise, Tay was bruised and exhausted. The simulation had safety protocols, but pushing them to the limit still caused pain. He was taken to the medical wing. Hana visited him that evening. He was lying in a hospital bed, his arm in a brace, his face swollen. "They think we're weak," Tay said bitterly. "They think the war was just luck, that we didn't earn our survival." Hana stood at the window, looking out at the Academy grounds. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of red and gold. "Let them think that," she said quietly. "How can you be so calm?" Tay demanded. "Don't you care? Don't you want to prove them wrong?" Hana turned to face him. In the fading light, her expression was hard to read. Proving them wrong would require showing them things they're not ready to see. Things that would start the war all over again. "What are you talking about?" But Hana just shook her head. "Rest, heal. Don't let them make you angry. Anger is what they want." She left before Tay could ask more questions. As she walked through the quiet corridors of the medical wing, she passed a memorial wall. It listed the names of cadets who had died during the war. Human names. Dalthic names. Thousands of them. Hana stopped and read the names. She had known some of them, had fought alongside some of them, had been the reason some of them died. The weight of memory pressed down on her shoulders like physical force. She had come to the Academy to escape her past, but the past was everywhere. In every face, every lesson, every simulation that treated war like a game. She thought about Commander Velcross and his arrogant certainty. She thought about the Dalthic ambassador claiming victory through mercy. She thought about all the people who had forgotten what the war actually cost. And she thought about the person she used to be, the ghost, the soldier who had done impossible things because someone had to. That person was still inside her, buried deep, but never really gone. Hana took a breath and made a decision. She would continue to hide. She would continue to be nobody. But if pushed far enough, if the peace they had bled for was truly threatened, she would remember how to be the ghost again. She just hoped it wouldn't come to that. The announcement came 3 days after Tay was released from the medical wing. The Academy would host a grand memorial ceremony honoring the fallen from both sides of the war. The highest military officials from both the Human Federation and the Dalthic Empire would attend. Hana felt something cold settle in her stomach when she heard the news. She knew who would be coming. Fleet Admiral Kyung, the man who had given her the mission that ended the war. The man who knew exactly who she was and what she had done. She thought about leaving. There were a dozen ways she could disappear from the Academy without anyone stopping her. But running would raise questions. Running would draw exactly the attention she had. Spent months avoiding. So she stayed and pretended everything was normal. Commander Velcross was in rare form during the days leading up to the ceremony. He seemed energized by the upcoming visit, eager to impress the dignitaries with his teaching methods and his dedication to Dalthic superiority. In class, he delivered a lecture that made the human students sit in silent fury. The so-called Ghost Protocol, Velcross began. pacing in front of the holographic displays, is the greatest example of human propaganda in recent history. You expect us to believe that one person infiltrated our entire command structure? That one soldier disabled our fleet and ended the war? He shook his head with theatrical disbelief. If such an operation occurred, it required a large team, extensive resources, and most importantly, Dalthic cooperation. My people chose peace. We allowed your operative, whoever they were, to complete their mission because we had already decided to end the conflict. The human cadets stared at their desks. No one challenged him. No one dared. Velcross stopped pacing and looked directly at the human students. Show me one person in this room who could have accomplished such a mission. Just one. Show me a human with the skill, the intelligence, the sheer capability to do what your legends claim. The silence stretched. Tay's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Other human students looked like they wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Hannah sat in the back row and felt the edges of her carefully maintained invisibility starting to crack. That evening, there was a pre-ceremony assembly. All the cadets gathered in the great hall while instructors prepared final details. Tay found Hannah sitting alone in one of the upper balconies, away from the crowd. "You've been quiet," he said, sitting beside her. "I'm always quiet, quieter than usual." Tay studied her face. "Are you okay?" Hannah didn't answer immediately. Below them, cadets milled around, talking and laughing. Dalthic and human students still mostly separated, the piece more theoretical than real. "Do you ever think about what you would do if you had the chance to change history?" Hannah asked suddenly. Tay blinked. "What do you mean?" "If you could go back and do one thing that would change everything, would you do it, even if the cost was high?" "I guess it depends on the cost." Hannah nodded slowly. "That's the problem. You never know the full cost until after it's done." Before Tay could respond, Commander Velcross's voice boomed through the hall, calling for attention. The assembly was beginning. The next morning brought the ceremony. The great hall was transformed with banners and displays honoring the fallen. Dignitaries arrived in waves, their ships landing on the Academy grounds in carefully orchestrated sequences. Hannah stood in formation with her fellow cadets, her face carefully neutral. When Fleet Admiral Kyung entered the hall, she felt his gaze sweep across the assembled students. His eyes paused on her for just a fraction of a second before moving on. "A message. I see you. I know you're here." The ceremony proceeded with speeches and moments of silence. The Dalthic Supreme Commander, Vexter, spoke about healing and moving forward. Fleet Admiral Kyung spoke about sacrifice and remembrance. Everything was diplomatic and carefully worded. Then Commander Velcross took the podium for the final speech. He talked about military excellence and the importance of truth in history. And then he returned to his favorite subject. "We honor the fallen today," Velcross said, "but we must also honor truth. The war ended through mutual decision, not through any single act of heroism. The Ghost Protocol, if it existed at all, was a collaborative effort that succeeded only because both sides wanted peace." He looked directly at the human cadets. "I challenge anyone here to prove otherwise. Show me the soldier who could have accomplished such a mission alone. Show me proof that humanity won through strength rather than circumstance." The hall was completely silent. Every eye was on Commander Velcross, waiting. Tay, still recovering but present in the formation, couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward, breaking protocol. "Sir, humanity didn't win through circumstance," Tay said, his voice shaking with controlled anger. "We won because we fought harder than anyone thought possible. We lost billions defending our worlds. We held the line when everyone said we would break. And yes, someone completed the Ghost Protocol. Someone did the impossible because it needed to be done. Velcross looked at him with contempt. Strong words from a cadet who couldn't defend himself in a simple training exercise. Is this the best humanity offers? Rhetoric without substance? The substance is in the result, Tay shot back. The war ended. We survived. That's not luck. That's enough, Velcross interrupted. Return to formation before you embarrass yourself further. Tay stood his ground for a moment longer, then stepped back. But the damage was done. The tension in the hall was thick enough to cut, and that's when Hannah stood. Everyone turned to look at her. She was nobody, just another average cadet. Her standing meant nothing, carried no weight. But something in her movement made people pause. She stepped out of formation and walked toward the front of the hall. Her steps were measured, controlled. She looked small next to the towering Dalthic commander, but she didn't seem afraid. You want proof, Hannah said quietly. Her voice didn't carry the weight Tay's had, but somehow everyone heard her. Commander Velcross looked down at her with dismissive amusement. And what proof do you have, cadet? What wisdom do you bring to this discussion? Your simulation of the Battle of Broken Stars is wrong, Hannah said. The Dalthic fleet positions are inaccurate. They're based on official reports, but those reports were based on false intelligence. The hall stirred. Velcross's expression hardened. And how would you know this? Hannah walked to the tactical console and began entering commands. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. The holographic display shifted, showing the battle from a different angle. The Dalthic fleet wasn't in the position your simulation shows, she continued. They were here and here and here. I know because I provided the intelligence that put them in those positions. I spent 87 days embedded in your command structure, feeding your strategists exactly what they needed to hear. The display changed again, showing infiltration routes and security bypasses that had never been in any official record. I know because I was aboard the flagship when I triggered the cascade that disabled your communications network. I know because I personally eliminated 6 command officers who could have stopped me. I know because I was there. Commander Velcross stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. That's impossible. You're a cadet. You're nobody. I was somebody, Hannah said softly. I was the ghost. The hall erupted. Cadets shouted questions. Officers moved forward. But Hannah stood perfectly still, her eyes on Commander Velcross, watching him realize who he had been tormenting for months. Fleet Admiral Kyung stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. That's enough. Everyone stand down. He walked to where Hannah stood and faced the assembled crowd. Captain Hannah Song, the Ghost Protocol operative, recipient of humanity's highest military honors, the soldier who ended the war. Hannah looked at him, and in her eyes was a mixture of resignation and relief. The hiding was over. The pretending was done. I came here to be a student, she said quietly. I came here to learn how to be normal again. I know, Admiral Kyung said gently, but some things can't stay hidden forever. Supreme Commander Vexter stepped forward, his towering figure drawing every eye. The Dalthic leader approached Hannah slowly, studying her face. So, he said finally, we meet at last. I searched for you for months during the war. We nearly caught you twice. I know, Hannah replied. I was there when you organized the search teams. I helped write the protocols you used to look for me. Vexter did something unexpected. He performed a formal Dalthic military salute, a gesture of respect given only to worthy opponents. You were extraordinary, he said, and terrifying. I was desperate, Hannah corrected, and terrified every single day. The hall was silent now, everyone watching this impossible moment. The soldier who ended the war and the commander who lost it, facing each other with something that looked almost like understanding, the assembly hall descended into controlled chaos. Academy security moved to establish order while cadets whispered frantically to each other. Hannah stood at the center of it all, feeling exposed in a way she hadn't felt since the war ended. Admiral Kyung raised his hand, calling for silence. "Clear the hall. All cadets except senior officers return to your quarters. This matter requires private discussion." The cadets filed out slowly, many casting backward glances at Hana. Tay caught her eye as he left, his expression a mixture of shock and something else. Understanding, maybe, or betrayal at being kept in the dark. When only the senior staff and dignitaries remained, Admiral Kyung turned to Hana. "You broke protocol, Captain. Your identity was classified for good reason." "Commander Velcross challenged us," Hannah said simply. "He wanted proof. I gave it to him." Velcross, who had been standing silent and rigid, finally spoke. "This is impossible. You're a child. You were a child during the war." "I was 20, Hannah said. "Old enough to fight. Old enough to do what needed to be done." Supreme Commander Vexter moved to the tactical display, studying the corrected battle positions Hana had entered. "These are accurate," he said quietly. "I remember now. We thought our intelligence was solid. We never suspected it came from a single source. A single person manipulating everything." "It wasn't manipulation," Hana said. "It was strategy. I gave you information that would position your forces where they needed to be. Information that was accurate enough to be believable, but incomplete enough to give us an advantage." "How?" Velcross demanded. "How did one person infiltrate an entire military structure?" For the first time since revealing herself, Hana smiled. It was a cold, tired smile. "Do you really want to know? It's not a pleasant story." "Tell us," Admiral Kyung said. "They deserve to understand what you did, what you sacrificed." Hana walked to the display and pulled up star charts. It started 6 months before the Battle of Broken Stars. The war was going badly for humanity. We were losing on every front. Our fleets were scattered, our defenses failing. Command needed something dramatic, something impossible. She zoomed in on a sector of space near Dalthic territory. They chose me because I was small, young, and unremarkable. I spoke 7 languages, including Dalthic. I had studied alien cultures since childhood, and I was willing to do whatever it took. The display shifted, showing refugee movements. I entered Dalthic space disguised as a refugee, a survivor from a destroyed colony ship. The Dalthics were screening refugees, but their systems were overwhelmed. I knew how to slip through. Hana's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she manipulated the display. I spent 2 months in refugee processing. I watched. I learned. I identified weak points in their security, and I made myself useful. I spoke languages that translators struggled with. I helped organize supply distributions. I became invisible by being helpful. Commander Velcross listened with growing horror. "You used our compassion against us." "I used everything available," Hana corrected. "War doesn't care about fairness." The display changed again, showing internal Dalthic military installations. My breakthrough came when I was recruited as a civilian contractor. They needed translators for their intelligence division. I applied. I passed their screening because I had spent months creating a perfect false identity. "That should have been impossible," Vexter said. "Our security protocols were extensive." "They were good," Hana agreed, "but they were designed to catch spies who acted like spies." I didn't act like a spy. I acted like a terrified refugee who wanted to survive, who wanted to be useful, who just wanted to belong somewhere. She pulled up personnel files. Once inside their intelligence division, I had access to communication networks. I didn't steal information. That would have raised alarms. Instead, I added information. Small changes. Slightly inaccurate ship positions. Maintenance schedules that were off by a few hours. Nothing dramatic enough to notice, but enough to create gaps in your coverage. The pieces were falling into place. Velcross looked like he wanted to be sick. The intelligence failures we experienced. The miscommunications. That was you? Some of it, Hannah said. Not all. War is chaotic. I just added to the chaos in strategic ways. How did you move through our installations? Vexler asked. We had restricted areas, security checkpoints. Hannah's expression darkened. I killed people. Not many, but enough. I would identify officers who worked alone, who had clearances I needed. I would eliminate them quietly and take their credentials. Sometimes their identities. The room went silent. This was the ugly truth of the Ghost Protocol. Not heroic battles or clever tactics, but quiet murders in empty corridors. Each identity lasted a few weeks before I had to move to another, Hannah continued. I became 6 different people over 3 months. Each one gave me access to deeper levels of your command structure. Each one required me to be someone else completely. She pulled up images of Dalthic command vessels. The final phase was accessing your flagship. That required eliminating a senior intelligence officer named Krendax. He worked late, alone, reviewing classified reports. It took me a week to learn his patterns. And then one night, I took his place. Commander Velcross whispered, I knew Krendax. He was found dead in his quarters. They said it was medical failure. It was made to look that way, Hannah said. But I was there. I was in the room. And I used his clearance to access your central communications hub. The display showed technical schematics. The Dalthic fleet used a centralized command network. It was efficient, but vulnerable. If someone with the right access introduced a cascading virus, the entire system would collapse. Your ships couldn't communicate, couldn't coordinate, couldn't function as a fleet. You created the virus? Admiral Kyung asked. I had help from human intelligence, Hannah admitted, but I delivered it. I watched it spread through your systems, and I watched as your mighty fleet became isolated ships, confused and vulnerable. Vexler studied her carefully. You could have done more. You could have killed us all, destroyed the fleet entirely. I could have, Hannah agreed. I had access to life support, weapons systems, everything. But my orders were to disable, not destroy. Humanity wanted to win the war, not commit genocide. So you held back, Velcross said slowly. Even when you could have finished us. I held back, Hannah confirmed. I disabled your war machine, and then I escaped. I stole a shuttle during the chaos and made it back to human lines. The Battle of Broken Stars was your fleet trying to reorganize while under attack from human forces who finally had the advantage. She closed the tactical display. That's the truth. That's what the Ghost Protocol actually was. Not some glorious mission. Just one person, alone, doing terrible things because someone had to. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in the room was processing what they had heard. The methodical infiltration. The calculated murders. The psychological toll of becoming different people, living among enemies, never able to let down your guard. Finally, Tay's voice came from the doorway. How long? Everyone turned. Tay stood in the entrance, having apparently snuck back to listen. How long did you live like that? Alone among enemies? 3 months of active operation, Hannah said quietly. But I was in Dalthic space for almost 6 months total. Every day wondering if someone would discover who I was. Every night unable to sleep, because sleep meant letting down your guard. And after? Tay pressed. After the war ended? Hannah's composure finally cracked. After, I couldn't stop being the ghost. I couldn't remember how to be just Hannah. I would wake up not knowing which person I was supposed to be. I couldn't trust anyone. Couldn't form connections. Couldn't believe the war was actually over. Admiral Kyung stepped forward. That's why we protected her identity. Captain Song completed the mission, but the mission nearly destroyed her. She spent a year in psychiatric care, another year in isolation, learning how to be human again. When she requested admission to the academy under a new identity, we approved it. She deserved a chance at a normal life. But there is no normal life after something like that, Hannah said. I tried. I really tried. But you can't undo what you've become. You can't forget what you've done. She looked around at the assembled officers and dignitaries. I came here hoping to be just another student. Just another cadet learning tactics and strategy. But I should have known better. The past doesn't let you go that easily. Commander Velcross approached her slowly. His earlier contempt was gone, replaced by something more complicated. Respect, perhaps. Or fear. Or both. My ship was one of the ones you disabled, he said. We drifted for 3 days before rescue came. I thought we would die out there. I know, Hannah said. I watched your ship on the scanner as I escaped. I almost went back. Almost tried to help. But that would have compromised everything. You chose the mission over mercy. I chose humanity's survival over personal guilt, Hannah corrected. And I've lived with that choice every day since. Velcross studied her face, seeing the weight she carried. You were a child doing an adult's work. A soldier doing a nightmare's job. And you succeeded. He performed the Dalthic salute again, more slowly this time. You have my respect, Captain Song, and my apology for the way I treated you these past months. You didn't know, Hannah said simply. That was the point. The news spread through the academy faster than any official announcement could have managed. By evening, every cadet knew that the quiet, unremarkable human student was actually the ghost, the soldier who had ended the war. The legend made real. Hannah stayed in her quarters while the academy leadership debated her fate. Through the walls, she could hear whispers and footsteps as cadets gathered in corridors, discussing what this meant. Some were excited. Some were afraid. Some were angry that she had hidden among them. Velmora entered their shared room quietly. She stood by the door for a long moment, studying her roommate as if seeing her for the first time. I never knew, Velmora said finally. All these months I treated you like you were nothing. Less than nothing. I wanted to be nothing, Hannah replied. She was sitting on her bunk, her few possessions already packed in case she was expelled. I wanted to be normal. You saved my life, you know, Velmora continued. During the war. My family was on one of the ships you disabled instead of destroying. My parents. My younger brother. They survived because you chose mercy. Hannah looked up surprised. I didn't know. How could you? You disabled hundreds of ships. Thousands of Dalthics lived because of your restraint. Velmora sat on her own bunk. I hated you. All this time, I hated the ghost, the human who ended our glory. But now I know you could have killed us all, and you didn't. I don't know what to feel. Feel however you need to, Hannah said. I can't tell you how to process this. Before Velmora could respond, there was a knock at the door. Tay entered, followed by several other human cadets. They filled the small room, all looking at Hannah with expressions ranging from awe to confusion. Is it true? One of them asked. Everything Commander Velcross said about your mission? All of it? Yes, Hannah said simply. Then why hide it? Tay demanded. Why pretend to be nobody when you're a hero? Because I'm not a hero, Hannah said firmly. Heroes save people. I killed people. A lot of people. I did necessary things, but that doesn't make them heroic. You ended the war, another cadet argued. I helped end the war, Hana corrected. But wars end at terrible cost. I paid part of that cost. So did millions of others. I don't want to be celebrated for that. The debate continued for hours. Some cadets came to thank her. Others came to challenge her right to hide among them. Some Delphic students stood outside her door, silent and uncertain, not sure if she was enemy or ally. Through it all, Hannah remained calm. She had known this day would eventually come. The hiding couldn't last forever. The next morning, she was summoned before the Academy Board. The chamber was formal and intimidating, with senior officers from multiple species sitting in judgment. Admiral Kyung was there, as was Supreme Commander Vexther. Commander Velcross sat to one side, his expression unreadable. The board chair, a stern Delphic general named Corvex, spoke first. Captain Song, your presence at this academy under false identity creates an unprecedented situation. We must determine the proper course of action. I understand, Hana said. There are several options, Corvex continued. Immediate transfer to active military duty, return to human intelligence services, or expulsion from the academy entirely. There's a fourth option, Admiral Kyung interjected. Allow her to complete her education as she requested. The board erupted in argument. Some supported the idea. Others called it absurd. How could someone with Hana's background and skills be treated as a simple cadet? Hana waited for the arguing to die down, then spoke. If I may address the board? Silence fell. She stood straight, military bearing returning naturally after months of hiding it. I came to this academy for a reason, she said. Not to hide from consequences or avoid responsibility. I came because I needed to learn how to build instead of destroy. The war taught me how to tear things apart. I wanted to learn how to put things together. She looked around the chamber. I gave 5 years of my life to ending the war. I'm asking for 4 years to learn how to preserve the peace. Not as the ghost, not as Captain Song, just as a student who wants to understand how to make the sacrifice worth it. Supreme Commander Vexther stood. The board should consider carefully. This cadet represents something important. Not just human military capability, but human restraint. She had the power to destroy my people, and she chose not to. That choice matters. It sets a dangerous precedent. Another board member argued, if we allow her special treatment, others will demand the same. I'm not asking for special treatment, Hana said. I'm asking to be treated like every other cadet. To attend classes, complete assignments, learn from instructors. The only difference is that I've already seen war. I already know its cost. Maybe that's exactly the perspective this academy needs. The debate continued for hours. Hana was dismissed while they deliberated. She waited in an empty corridor, watching ships come and go through the viewport. She thought about leaving, just walking away and finding somewhere else to disappear. But she had already tried running from herself. It didn't work. Finally, she was called back. The board had reached a decision. Captain Song, Corvex began, this board has voted to allow you to complete your education here. However, there are conditions. Hana felt something release in her chest. What conditions? You will maintain your cadet status, but serve as a tactical consultant to senior instructors. You will lead a joint seminar on asymmetric warfare, teaching both human and Delphic students about unconventional strategy. And you will submit to regular psychological evaluations to ensure you are handling the stress of public exposure. I accept, Hana said without hesitation. There's one more thing, Admiral Kyung said. I'm offering you an immediate promotion. Command of your own vessel. A position in human strategic command. You've earned it several times over. Hannah looked at him for a long moment. A year ago, she might have accepted. The military was all she knew. But something had changed during her months of hiding. With respect, Admiral, I decline. I've seen enough of war. I want to help build the peace. Here, where former enemies learn to work together. This is where I can make a difference now. Vexter made an approving sound. A warrior who chooses peace is stronger than one who knows only battle. You honor both our peoples, Captain Song. Just Cadet Song. Hannah corrected gently. At least until graduation. The board session ended. Hannah walked out of the chamber, feeling lighter than she had in months. The hiding was over. The truth was known. And somehow, impossibly, she had been given another chance. The following weeks were difficult. Adjusting to public knowledge of her identity meant navigating constant attention. Some cadets treated her like a celebrity. Others avoided her entirely. But gradually, a new normal began to emerge. Her Joint Warfare Seminar became the most popular class at the academy. Hannah taught with brutal honesty, sharing not just tactics, but the psychological and moral weight of asymmetric warfare. She didn't glorify the Ghost Protocol. She showed it for what it was: necessary, effective, and soul-crushing. Commander Velcross attended every session, sitting in the back and taking notes. After one class, he approached her. I've learned more in 3 weeks than in 3 years of teaching, he admitted. You make us confront uncomfortable truths about warfare. Good, Hannah said. War should be uncomfortable. The moment it becomes easy is the moment we lose our humanity. Velmora became one of Hannah's closest allies. The Dalthic cadet used her family's influence to help smooth tensions between human and Dalthic students. She organized joint study groups and cultural exchanges. Slowly, carefully, the bridge between former enemies grew stronger. Tay remained her best friend, though their relationship had changed. He understood now why she had seemed broken, why she woke with nightmares, why certain situations triggered her. He stopped trying to get her to be more social, and instead helped create safe spaces where she could breathe. 6 months after the revelation, the Academy held its annual tactical competition. Teams of cadets from different species competed in complex strategic scenarios. Hannah was asked to design one of the challenges. She created a scenario with no perfect solution. A situation where every choice had costs, where victory required sacrifice, where the best outcome still meant loss. It frustrated the cadets until they realized the point. War doesn't have clean endings, Hannah explained to the exhausted competitors. Peace doesn't mean everyone wins. It means finding solutions where everyone can live with the outcome. That's harder than any battle. At graduation, Hannah stood among her fellow cadets in her simple uniform, no medals or decorations visible. She had earned the right to wear them, but she chose not to. This moment wasn't about the past. It was about the future. Admiral Kyung attended the ceremony. He found her afterward in the crowd. You've become a good teacher, he said. Better than we hoped. Are you sure you won't reconsider active duty? I'm sure, Hannah replied. My war is over, Admiral. This is where I belong now, helping the next generation understand that peace is worth protecting. And if war comes again? Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then I'll do what needs to be done. But until that day, I'll keep building instead of destroying. I'll keep teaching instead of fighting. I'll keep being Hannah Song, teacher and student, instead of the ghost. She looked out at the graduates, human and Dalthic, and a dozen other species, all celebrating together. This is my mission now, making sure their wars never have to be as desperate as ours was. That's worth more than any medal or promotion. Kyung nodded slowly. Then I'll leave you to it. But Hannah, thank you for everything you did. and everything you're still doing. As the Admiral walked away, Tay appeared with Velnora and several other cadets. They had plans to celebrate, to toast their graduation and their uncertain futures. Hannah joined them, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, exactly. Not peace. But something close to both. The weight of her past would never fully lift. The ghost would always be part of who she was. But here, surrounded by friends who knew the truth and accepted it, teaching students who looked at her with respect instead of fear, she had found something worth holding on to. She had found a way forward, and that, more than ending the war, more than any impossible mission, felt like a victory worth celebrating.